This week in Jamaica Now, increases coming from minimum wage earners. Opposition leader Mark Golding accuses the government of trying to trick Jamaicans with announcement of no new taxes. Deal, teachers and junior doctors sign wage agreements with the government. And senior civil servant Grace McLean's home among several raided by law enforcement. I'm Jovan Johnson and this is Jamaica Now. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced a raft of benefits covering low-wage earners, contributors to the National Housing Trust, pensioners and persons seeking to learn new skills. He made the disclosures during a 5-hour presentation in the national budget debate in the House of Representatives on Thursday. That's in addition to a 1-hour delay after Parliament's mic system failed. Power also went briefly. Mr. Holness says effective June 1, minimum wage earners will see a 44% increase in their salaries.
This administration is fully committed to providing minimum wage earners with a livable wage as part of its commitment to prosperity for our people. The Minister of Finance has announced a $1 trillion budget with no new taxes. This is a clear strategy by the government to ensure that there is no erosion of the income of Jamaicans. We recognize that the contribution of minimum wage earners, such as household workers, artisans, laborers, store clerks, and security personnel, is vital to the success of our manufacturers, hotel professionals, lawyers, doctors, and teachers in meeting our national productivity and service targets. Therefore, we are pleased to announce that starting June 1, 2023, the national minimum wage will increase from $9,000 per 40-hour week to $13,000 per 40-hour week.
The minimum wage for industrial security guards is to move from $10,500 per week to $14,000. And come July 1, the National Housing Trust, NHT, will increase the loan limit to a single applicant by $1 million. The Prime Minister says a single applicant will be able to access a loan from the NHT in the sum of $7.5 million, up from $6.5 million. This represents a 15% increase in the loan limit. Another major announcement is the removal of tuition fees for certain courses offered by the Heart NSTA Trust, the government's main training agency.
The policy objective now must be to get more Jamaicans into the labor force with work-ready attitudes and requisite skills at all levels. The critical and core mission of the Heart Trust NSTA now is to increase the supply of trained labor to industry.
And the Prime Minister also announced that 10,000 black water tanks will be provided to needy households across Jamaica in the next financial year, which starts on April 1. He said focus will initially be placed on areas adversely affected by the ongoing drought. Other major announcements include a June 2025 completion deadline for the new parliamentary building at National Heroes Park and the designation of the Pedro Plains in the Breadbasket Parish of St. Elizabeth as a national strategic project. Under the $200 million project to be financed by Jamaica and a loan from the French government, water is expected to be provided to hundreds of farmers in communities including Flaggerman, Greenfield, Southfield and Top Hill. Meanwhile, opposition leader Mark Golding gave his budget presentation this week and he said Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke's heralding of no new taxes in his opening budget debate presentation last week rings hollow. Mr. Golding argued that over the fiscal years 2021, 2022 and 2022-2023, the government raked in an additional $208 billion in taxes, or an overall 34% increase over what was projected.
These massive increases in taxes weren't limited to the last 2 years either. If we look at the last 7 fiscal years, the tax take has increased from 24.4% of GDP, 24.4% of GDP, to 28.2% of GDP, placing Jamaica amongst the highest taxed countries in the world. And if we want to think about it another way, to look at it from the perspective of an individual, then over the last 7 years of the Jamaica Labour Party administration, the tax take from every Jamaican, 15 years and older, has increased from $197,000 to 365,000, an increase of 85% over that period. This JLP administration is now extracting 168,000 more from the pockets of every Jamaican than when they first came to office. So, and when they come here with the Samfi statement about no new taxes, you know what the real story is.
Meanwhile, Mr. Golding used his budget presentation to announce a new pitch for government that he called New Direction. He said some of the things that fall under that framework are land reform, education and training, social transformation, security, health and education.
We are ready to implement transformational policies that lead to a more competitive labor force in higher paying jobs. Policies that promote an economy that encourages research and development and the deeper use of technology to accelerate productivity and growth. A streamlined, integrated all-of-government plan with clear targets and timelines, where the left hand and the right hand know what each other are doing, and both are working together to a common purpose. I agree, Madam Speaker, I agree that job descriptions for members of the Cabinet is a good idea, but we must actually do it. Madam Speaker, first of all, our direction is decidedly new because we begin with a plan of action, and our action plan includes and integrates all portfolios in a single vision. We believe that regularizing land tenure, giving greater legal access to land to more people more efficiently, brings greater order in society, gives hope and builds trust among people. Regularizing land tenure for us is not condoning lawlessness. It is providing a real sense of ownership and something to work for in life. It is the basis of creating intergenerational wealth and the elimination of intergenerational poverty. It is your own soil to till and your own place to build. The very psyche of a people, their sense of responsibility, dignity and pride begin with owning a piece of the rock. Our land policy is based on regularization, not redistribution. It is grounded in equity, not exclusivity. We believe in parity, not patricians. We build up homes, communities, and spirits. We don't mash down homes.
In other news now, two major unions representing teachers and junior doctors signed wage agreements this week under the government's contentious compensation review for public sector workers. On Sunday, the Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, and the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, JMDA, signaled their support for revised offers. Their votes took place online, with more than 90% of the junior doctors backing the deal and at least 80% of JTA delegates voting yes. JMDA President Dr. Mindy Fitzhenley says the proposal from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service addressed some sticking points.
With this offer, our doctors who are in fixed-term contracts will move over into a post come April 1, 2023, and then all of our doctors will be compensated at the same rate come April 1, 2023, which would now mean all of our doctors were at the same equal footing, and this is something that the previous executives have been fighting for decades. So not only have we been able to secure a post for every doctor, but also protect the doctors in the future to ensure that they too have to be hired into a post.
Meanwhile, the JTA's acceptance came 3 days after a rejection vote and amid a 4-day protest that disrupted the public school system. The delegates gave their approval after the government agreed to start trained graduates at $3 million per annum come April 1, 2024, a bump up on the $2.95 million initially proposed. The wage deals with public sector workers runs for 3 years starting April 1, 2022. At Monday's signing, JTA President LaSonia Harrison left after saying she felt the teachers deserved better, forcing President-elect Leighton Johnson to sign. The agreements come as a March 31 deadline looms for the payment of millions due for the first year of the 3-year deal. The Police Officers Association, which represents senior cops, has rejected their offer and called on Prime Minister Andrew Holness to intervene. The home of former Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Grace McLean, was among 9 premises targeted in a series of coordinated operations by law enforcement on Friday. The search and seizure operations related to alleged financial impropriety involving the Ministry of Education and the Joint Committee on Tertiary Education, JCTE. The operations were conducted at 5 locations in Kingston and St. Andrew, 3 in St. James and 1 in Westmoreland. Excelsior Community College and properties linked to former chairman of the JCTE, Cecil Cornwall, were searched. The Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, MOCA, and the Financial Investigations Division seized several devices and documents. MOCA said no arrests were made. Dr. McLean's home is located in St. Andrew. In January 2022, Dr. McLean was barred from returning to work at the Education Ministry until it's decided whether she will have to pay back some of the $124 million that allegedly cannot be accounted for. An 80-year-old woman whose accounts at Stocks and Securities Limited SSL were reportedly defrauded of $830,000 has filed a lawsuit against the investment firm and several of its former senior officials. Former client relationship manager Jean Panton, who has been charged in the alleged fraud, and founder Hugh Croskery have been sued. The claimant, Jean Ford, a retired librarian who resides in Canada, is also seeking restitution in the sum of $518,175 for SSL's alleged unauthorized sale of her 11% 2021 bond issued by the Jamaica Public Service Company. SSL has been named as first defendant in the claim, followed by Ms. Panton, Mr. Croskery and his son Mark, Lamar Harris, Zachary Harding, Jeffrey Cobham, Sarah Lawrence Adamson, and Peter Nib. The defendants served as either SSL board members or chief executive officers. Ms. Ford has accused the defendants of negligence, breaching their fiduciary duties, conspiracy and unjust enrichment. Another senior officer has resigned from the Jamaica Defence Force JDF following an investigation into sexual harassment allegations. On Thursday, the JDF said the probe also recommended disciplinary action for other service members who had knowledge of the allegation but failed to provide a report. That's a breach of the JDF policy. The JDF says the investigation was prompted by an official report made by a female service member in February this year regarding inappropriate conduct by the senior officer. In December last year, a JDF officer implicated in a sexual misconduct scandal was also asked to resign from the organization following an internal. Firefighter Sergeant Leo Bennett safely climbed down from atop the Halfway Tree Transport Center in St. Andrew on Tuesday after hours of negotiations involving his colleagues from the Jamaica Fire Brigade and health practitioners. The suspended firefighter told media that he was upset about the welfare of his colleagues and wanted the brigade to drop a case against him and several others over an alleged illegal protest last year. And that's it for this edition of Jamaica Now, your weekly review of the big news stories. Send us your comments at onlinefeedback@gleanerjm.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Gleaner and on Facebook at Gleaner Jamaica. Like this video on our YouTube page, turn on the notification and subscribe today. I'm Jovan Johnson, and before we go, 5 months ago, Chanel Francis cried publicly after learning that she was tricked into paying $800,000 for a plot of government land in Clifton, St. Catherine that was not approved for sale. 2 pronouncements were made this week about that matter in the 2023 budget debate in Parliament.
I hear about land selling over here and I come buy a piece of land.
How much you pay for that land?
800,000.
How far did you reach?
I take it up out of the ground. We spent 400,000 including the workman for dig the foundation and buy the steel, the cement and the blocks.
Okay.
I go look work just to come pay workman. And everything, see that everything gone. I know what to do no more.
We are preparing a claim to be filed in the Supreme Court, and it's well advanced, for compensation for the vulnerable families of Clifton, near Bernard Lodge in St. Catherine, whose homes were demolished last October in what can only be described as the most cruel and inhuman acts by agents of the state.
I spoke with Chanel and others who were affected and assured them that because we are a government of equity, of fairness, and a government that truly cares about the people, we will ensure that they get access to own land legally and for which they can get a title. Today, Chanel is the first of those affected in the land scam at Bernard Lodge to be allotted a plot of land and I will be assisting her, Madam Speaker, with getting her legal building going.